So good evening. My name is Carolina Villapondo Doherty. I'm the publisher with the Kerrville Daily Times. It's an honor to be here with you this evening at the forum sponsored by the Chamber. And we are so grateful that they believe in informing our residents so that we have an opportunity to meet firsthand our candidates. And we thank you for serving and being with us so that we can all be as informed as possible when we go to the ballots on May 7th. Or in early voting, which starts April 25th. This event is being recorded. The Chamber is so grateful. We're so grateful for you to record that, and it will be posted on their YouTube channel later this week. A little bit about the questions that we've developed. They have been developed by the Chamber's Governmental Affairs Committee. And so those committee members compiled a list of questions, but they also collected questions submitted by the public in advance of tonight's forum. And also, when you came in, you probably had the chance to submit a question. So a couple of them will be straight from what you've provided us here tonight. But as Brad said, the list of questions that we compiled was too lengthy to have enough time here tonight. But they're going to compile that full list and make them available to our candidates so that they're able to be aware of your concerns and can address and answer your questions as they go about campaigning the rest of this season. As a reminder, this is a forum designed to allow the candidates to express their views on key issues facing our city. But this is not a debate. So as a forum, we give each candidate equal opportunity to answer the same questions. Earlier this evening, each set of candidates in each race drew a letter to see who would make their first opening statement. And I believe, Joe, you drew A, is that correct?
I do
so
not know.
You will go first. So you will make your first opening statement, and that's going to be 2 minutes. And then Katie, you'll have the chance to make your opening statement, which will also be 2 minutes. Following the opening statements, make sure I'm correct here. After that, candidate B, which is Katie, will go first answering the first question. And then that same question will be posed to Joe. Following that, we'll just go back and forth. The second question will come back to you, and Joe will keep going, and we will alternate back and forth until we've answered 6 questions. And then you'll each have a chance to make a closing statement, which will also be 2 minutes. As Brad mentioned, we have a timekeeper. Thank you, Valerie. She will give our candidates a cue when you have 1 minute remaining, and then you will get a second cue when you have 30 seconds remaining, and then you will get that buzzer if your time has lapsed. We ask our candidates to be respectful and not interrupt your opponent if they're speaking, and please be respectful of time, not eating into your opponent's time allotted. We are again beginning with our City Council Place 3 candidates, and following answering all 6 questions in your closing statement, we'll have a 5-minute break. We will move on to our candidate. We have one with us tonight in Place 4, and then another 5-minute break, and then we'll move on to our mayoral candidates. So, to get started, Joe, you have 2 minutes for an opening statement.
Thank you. Really, what I want to say with my few minutes is to say thank you for being here. It's important, no matter who you vote for, that you're interested in government. I want to say thank you to the Governmental Affairs Committee who is sponsoring this event. I want to say I'm thankful for Schreiner University hosting the event. I'm thankful for Carolina moderating the event. The last time I was at one of these, I had Carolina's job, and it's a much nicer job. In fact, these are the most comfortable hot seats I've ever seen. I want to thank my wife, Carolyn, who's here tonight, and my mom, Pat. Thank you for being here. And I want to thank the fellow candidates, everybody who's running. You know, putting your name on the list, putting your name on a ballot, letting your name be out there for people to mark for or against, takes a certain level of humility and fear. And so I'm thankful for everyone who's running. City government in our community serves an important role. Public safety, infrastructure, parks, library, and hundreds of other roles. The city council's job is to represent the citizens, to listen, to work together, and to allocate resources. And that's what I hope to do if I'm elected in May. Thank you.
Okay, and please forgive me, I should have done a better job of introducing you. Their names will be on the ballot. Joe Herring Jr. and Katie Chapman Hanna. So again, thank you for being with us. Now, Katie, you have 2 minutes for your opening comment.
Thank you. Again, my name is Katie Chapman Hanna. I'm a registered nurse, and I'm very honored to be back on this campus, my alma mater. I graduated from Florida University just this last spring, so it's wonderful to be here again, especially in this capacity. I think that really describes what a nurse does. We serve the community, we analyze and we intervene. And I think that that's really important for me running for this position. I feel like I'm trained and I'm also very qualified in that respect. I joined nursing because I wanted to be there for people, I wanted to advocate for people. Advocacy means to speak for someone or on someone's behalf. And so as a representative of the city of Kerrville, I would hope to always do that. I also want to put my ethical principles from nursing directly into my work if I am elected to the city of Kerrville. My primary goal for being here is to inform, and as I'm learning, to share that with all of my constituents and all of the citizens of Kerrville. I was asked to be here so that I would represent them. I understand that there are a great many people who have a very specific set of needs, and I think that's what I've been asked to come here and do, is to share that and to represent those people and also to bring these ethical principles to the job. And I'm all about fiscal responsibility and also just being there and learning and sharing that with everyone, being forthcoming with my role in City Council. Thank you very much. My name is Katie Chapman Hanna. Thank you again.
So Katie, take a breath, and then you'll get our first question of the evening. So first question, what one trait makes you the better candidate for this race?
I am very enthusiastic. I have a lot of desire to be here. I have no financial investment in the city. My only investment is doing my civic duty. And I feel like that's something very important to me. I'm here because I want to be here, not because I have any other ulterior motive. And I feel like I represent people who want representation that they lack. And that's primarily my goal.
Okay. Joe, same question. What one trait makes you the better candidate for this race?
I find it difficult to talk about myself, but in this case, let me say this one thing. I feel I have experience. I have served on the city council for 4 years. I was mayor for 2 years. And honestly, it was a lifetime ago. It was 30 years ago. So that experience, coupled with serving as the chairperson of the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce, or serving as the president of the board of the Symphony of the Hills, or, well, serving. That's what I've been doing for the last 35, 40 years, and serving on the museum board. I think experience. The other thing, which is going to be important for whoever you elect, you need to pick someone who can work well with others, you know, who can listen to the other side and respect the other side and get things done. And I think I have a long record of getting things done and working well with people with whom I might disagree. That's why I think I would be a good candidate.
Thank you. So, Katie, question number 2. What are the top 2 issues facing Kerrville, and how can we best move our community forward to overcome these challenges?
Okay. From what I understand, I petitioned to get on the ballot, and while petitioning, I had the opportunity to speak with a lot of people, a lot of the citizens of Kerrville, and the same issues kept coming up. They want transparency, they want accountability, they want representation that they feel they're lacking. And I also would like to point out that the biggest 2 issues include, for me, based on that, fiscal responsibility, that was a big one. Infrastructure needs is a big one. People were wanting to know more, and they were asking me questions about how it works with getting roads fixed and so on. And of course, while answering their questions, I learned a lot as well. I was really happy to do that. Fiscal responsibility is huge. And I also want to say that I would like to look more into our water resources. because it seems a drought already this year, and so I think the subject of water is always a good idea. So the two biggest issues would have to be fiscal responsibility and water resources, and my goal or my solution for those things is to do better planning, budgeting of especially our infrastructure needs. Infrastructure is the basic primary goal, or it's the primary function of any city government. And I think that we need to make sure that we always put those things first, infrastructure first. We fix the roof before we put in the jacuzzi tub. And I think it's important that not only do I want to address that, I want to work well with other people to get that done, but I think we need to really work on planning and budgeting what we have, and we need to look at our debt capacity. We need to see what we have, what we really need, and we need to work together toward that goal. And also for water, I want to work with all of the different entities within the city to find out where we are and what I can do as a member of the city government to make sure that our city of Kerrville residents always have water available to them. And especially before we incentivize any other people coming in, make sure that we always have our own citizens taken care of with water, especially before we incentivize additional people coming in. But yes, that would be my response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Joe, I'll repeat the question for you. What are the top two issues facing the city of Kerrville, and how can we best move our community forward to overcome these challenges?
I actually agree with Katie. Water's a deal. Water has been a deal since I was on council 30 years ago. We've recently had a story in the Daily Times. Roger wrote the story about how we have adequate water supply for X number of years. That's true unless the growth rate is steeper than we anticipate. ASR wells have helped over the last 30 years with that problem to store water in times during less demand, and take out water when you have peak demand. Water is always going to be the big issue. But secondly, I think we really need to look at where are people going to live. Housing prices have gone crazy. And while I don't think the city government has any role in setting prices of houses, I think if you come with a price, a seller should sell their house for a fair price to a buyer. But if the city government can help provide housing, especially for those who are less fortunate, affordable housing, anything the city government can do in that regard, I think is important. In case in point, the Lennar subdivision is a good example of the city government working with private individuals or private organizations to provide housing at a more affordable rate. But I'm going to tell you the truth. The big issues facing city government today are exactly the same ones that were facing 30 years ago. The only thing that's different is the faces, the people involved. And that's a challenge we're going to have this year, next year, next 20 years. Thank you.
Thank you. All right, let's move on. Question number 3. Katie, do you support tax increases if needed to support the continuation of city services? And if so, which city services would you consider those increases for?
I think that the more we find ways to spend money, the more necessary it will be to raise taxes. I think that considering the fact that 70% of Kerrville citizens actually are subject to tax increases, would say that, well, that means that the middle-class family raising children would be the ones to feel the brunt of it. Businesses would then pass those tax increases along to their consumer. I think that we should do our utmost to not raise taxes, because I think that would indicate to me a mismanagement of what funds we have. Are we living outside of our means? Are we using our tax dollars well? These are all questions that I have. So in general, no, we should not raise taxes. If it was necessary to raise the taxes, my first question would be, how can we avoid this? It's kind of that nursing intervention rule. What is the least invasive way we can approach this before we go and raise taxes? How can we make this better before we raise the taxes? So I can't say that I'd ever like tax increases, and I would do whatever is necessary to prevent tax increases from occurring. But if they had to occur because there was no other alternative, then I would make sure to see where we could cut elsewhere. Thank you.
All right, Joe, same question. Do you support tax increases if needed to support the continuation of key city services? And if so, which city services would you support those increases for?
I think historically, the most recent city councils and the ones before have actually lowered the tax rate. That doesn't mean they haven't collected more revenue because our community is growing and there's more taxable property. The voters are going to decide something in May. They're going to decide on a proposition that would have a bond to build a public safety center. And if the voters vote for that, they're going to vote for a tax increase themselves. That will increase taxes. And I support the bond. I'm voting for the bond. And if it passes, I will work hard to make sure those dollars are used wisely. I mean, if taxes had to be raised to provide good police protection, fire protection, and keep the water running, I'm sure it could be considered. But I don't anticipate raising taxes to fund those things because in the past recent years, the rate has actually gone down. And that's because of, in my opinion, good management on the city government's side. So, yes, if there was an emergency and we had to raise taxes to make sure we had enough police and fire protection, I would certainly look at it, but I don't anticipate that actually happening.
Thank you both. Question number 4, Katie. This is a forum sponsored by the Chamber. Thank you, Chamber. And so this is a very appropriate question for this venue. Why should area businesses specifically support your candidacy?
Because I would represent their money and I would make sure that I spend it wisely or I vote to spend it wisely. And I also think that I understand the premise of when taxes go up, the people suffer, and even businesses that felt the brunt of the COVID-19 restrictions, they're still trying to come back from this. And if the bond election, for example, occurs and where it's voted into practice, then what we're going to end up with will be an increase in taxes. And do consider it's also an inflationary period. There's a lot of inflation, a 40-year high from what I've been hearing. And there's gas. The gas prices are ridiculous. There's talk of war over in Europe. There are a lot of really big things happening right now that do directly affect Main Street. And where do businesses get their consumers but Main Street? So I think that the businesses, if they want someone who's going to be fiscally responsible, who will be accountable, who will be forthcoming, then I would be the candidate for them because I'm going to make sure that I always spend their tax dollars wisely, and I'm going to make sure that whatever we do in Kerrville will be sustainable and appropriately so. Thank you.
Joe, why should area businesses support your candidacy?
Well, and you framed the question about the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce. You know, I represented the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce as the chairman of the board of directors of the Chamber of Commerce. I understand the role of the Chamber of Commerce. I think the businesses on the Chamber of Commerce know I understand what the Chamber of Commerce is for. And beyond that, I mean, my family's owned a printing company here in Kerrville since 1964. That means we've had good years, better years, and hard years. And one year, our poor print shop burned up. So I've been through enough to know that you can have a character builder year too. Here's the thing. The business leaders of our community know that I understand their interests because I am a business. I own a business with my sister. And I was a representative for them on the board of the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce. My experience and my desire would be to help make our community prosper. And I think the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce has the same goal. So that's just my experience, I think.
We're moving along well. You have 2 more questions, so almost out of the hot seat. Katie, question number 5. Do you support legislation or policies that make it easier for businesses to open and existing businesses to expand? And if so, what would that look like?
Well, if you're talking about legislation, we're wanting to put in place laws and regulations associated with those things. I would most certainly want to make sure that those, any of that legislation proposed would be constitutional, firstly. I want to make sure that it represents all of the people and not just special interests. I would also want to make sure that, you know, I know what I'm talking about before I sign on the dotted line. I would have to do a lot of very careful research into any proposed legislation. So not knowing more about such specific legislation, I'd have to say I would table that, research it, and find out what the people think before I would move on that. But that's a very good question, thank you.
You're welcome. Joe, same question. Do you support legislation or policies that make it easier for new businesses to open and existing businesses in Kerrville to expand?
Yes. Oh, and to expand.
And if so, what would you support specifically?
Look, a lot of times the big headlines are, hey, we've got this new company to come to Kerrville, and that's good news. But what we really need to focus on, in my opinion, is those people who've been here working in their business for decades, following the rules, meeting payroll, paying taxes. Those people need our attention too. And the Kerrville Area Chamber of Commerce actually does a good job at that. We were at the print shop after our fire and some other issues. I actually went to the chamber. They had an SBA representative, and we talked through some strategies to help our business get past some hurdles. The chamber's helped our business. City government likewise could do the same. Make it easier to work with city government, streamline the processes, and encourage business. Now, I've heard some things too, that sometimes it's hard for businesses to work with City Hall. That has not been my experience, but others have said it. So maybe we need to look at how can businesses work better with City Hall, with city government. How can we make it efficient, and how can we help make our community better through the small businesses that are already here. And I would hope to work on stuff like that from day one. I think that's important.
Okay, thank you. Last question, and this is a question submitted from the public. If the public safety facility, one second, let me make sure I'm reading this, it's handwritten. Yes, if the public safety facility is justified by our community's need, why has a PAC been formed to promote it? Who are the funders of this PAC? If you could name names, that would be helpful. And then in addition to this question, what is your view on the public safety position that's being proposed?
Okay. I do not know any of the people on the PAC. However, I did attend 2 of the ad hoc committee meetings that were held in regard to the safety complex. I sat in with the entire committee and listened to the entire presentation. And from what I saw, we had one architectural group, Randall Scott, and only one. We saw blueprints and comparatives to much larger safety complexes that are in much larger population areas. So essentially I saw one bid, and I saw that there is definitely a need for a safety complex. This is an infrastructure issue. And I asked one of the members of the ad hoc committee, why wasn't this done before? This is infrastructure. Why was this not done sooner? And I won't tell you what the answer was, but essentially this is very important. I don't know the members of the PAC, but I do hope everyone understands that when I say that I'm very happy that we're having a bond election. It's, I believe, the first one since the year I was born, 1987, yay. And so I'm really happy to see bond elections. That's the people getting to decide what their money is spent on, rather than an obligation of credit, which is supposed to be for emergency purposes. But it's used, I think, overly used. And I have a problem with that. So again, this is an infrastructure issue. It should have been handled before. I am not against the safety complex. What I am against is the fact that now, in a time of great inflation and burden on the middle class, we're being asked to raise taxes to 70% of the population, as about 29, almost 30% are capped. 65 and plus don't feel that tax increase. So we're burdening 70% of our working class parents and people raising children to go ahead and bring this in when it should have been done before, and possibly even cheaper. What I would like to see are more options. I want to see how we can get this at a better price, and I want to see how there's more representation and more options on the table. I am absolutely pro police force and fire department. I come from a long history of military lineage. My mother and father served honorably in Germany in the 80s as military policemen. All of my family members, with the exception of myself, have been served honorably in the military. And I am absolutely 100% backing the blue. However, I think that we absolutely need to look at this. We need to approach it prudently. And we need to make sure that all of our options are on the table and that we are really representing the people who are going to feel the pinch of this tax increase. But thank you very much, fire, sheriff, and police departments for what you do. It's a hard job, and it's definitely one that's very necessary. So I'd like to thank all of those people. They need to understand that I do support them, but I also support the people and the interest of the people. Thank you.
Thanks, Katie. Joe, if the public safety facility is justified by our community need, why has a PAC been formed to promote it? If you know names, please do share. And what is your view on the facility?
Okay. I think a PAC is formed to help have a campaign, to share an idea. I'm sure I know almost everybody on the PAC, but I don't know who they are. I haven't read the list. When Hal Peterson Middle School was built, after the bond election passed almost 3-1, that election there was a PAC. There was a political action committee. I was on that PAC. And the job of a PAC is to communicate the need. If the voters say no, the voters say no. But in this case, I hope they say yes. And here's why. If we are asking men and women to put on the uniform and go out and protect us every day, don't they deserve a decent place to work? If we're asking people to come in to municipal court and meet their obligations after running a red light, don't they have a safe place to come? That's what this is about, public safety. I'm going to vote for it, and I hope other people vote for it. But here's the kicker. If it passes, that whoever you elect to city council is going to have a passel of decisions to make. I think you need to elect someone who can take a big project, break it into pieces, and get it done. A PAC is a way to communicate. It's not a bad thing. And it's not a secret thing. I'm sure there's a list somewhere of who's on that PAC. If people vote for it, I hope to be one of the ones helping to make a decision to get it done. And we need to give, especially our police officers, a decent place to work. And that's what this is really about.
Thank you. Thank you both for answering those questions that were provided. And you now have 3 additional minutes for a closing statement.
Thank you. To close, I'd like to say, I know I don't have the experience that our own Mr. Herring does, but I would like to point out that he had to start somewhere too. He had his first time going on to council, and I'm sure it was a learning curve, and I've heard wonderful things about Mr. Herring, and also the benefit that his good business has brought to our Kerrville. So I'm very happy for that, and it's a tough act to follow, but if I'm elected, I hope to be, I hope to represent people in a way that makes them proud of me. I want them to say, yes, she is representing me. Yes, she's doing what she said she would do. Because so often when we vote for politicians, they say one thing and they do another, and I think we're all very tired of that in whatever capacity, nationally, statewide. But I want to make sure that I always uphold those ethical principles from nursing, including justice, accountability, and fidelity, which means keeping promises. I want to always be the person who comes forward with information. I'm never going to be afraid to say, hey, I don't know the answer, but let me get it for you. I want to learn. I want to serve my community. I grew up here. I'm a native-born Kerrvillian. I was born at Peterson when it was over where City Hall stands now, just like Mr. Herring. So it's really neat that we're both native Kerrvillians. And while I don't have the same experience, I hope in the same spirit that I will follow in your footsteps with honor and responsibility and a true desire to serve and represent the people of this good city. And I thank you all so much for coming tonight. It's been my honor to speak here tonight, especially in the grounds of my alma mater. And I ask you to all please continue to be involved in your government process. That's the most important thing any person can do, is to be involved in their own local government and any other government processes that they want to be involved with. Thank you all so much and have a blessed evening.
Katie, I have to apologize. You actually had 2 minutes, and so Joe,
beg your pardon.
you stepped to yours, so thank you for doing that without my incorrect cue. And Joe, you have 2 minutes for a closing statement.
Sure. I want to say thank you for coming. I want you to vote. I want you to vote for one of us with a firm conviction that you are voting for someone who will represent you. I admire Katie for running. It's not easy. It's not easy. You kind of put yourself on the line when you run. And she's actually much more experienced than I was back in 1990. So, here's the thing. If you like me, I will work hard for you. You know, I know Kerrville. I know its story. I know its past. I know how city government works. And I know a lot of you. I love Kerrville. And I will work for Kerrville. So, please vote. That's the most important thing. Please vote. And thank you, Carolina. You did a great job.
Thank you. I'm not as experienced as you. Talk of experience
And
tonight.
thanks for hosting us tonight. Thank you very kindly.
You're welcome.
And thank you for your attention. Now, Katie and I were the warm-up act. Okay, we're supposed to soften the audience a little bit.
Did we tenderize you all?
I think so. And so, the next act will be even better.
So before we get to that, we will take a 5-minute break, and we did not ask the candidates to do this beforehand, but since we have a break, I hope you will stick around, and if you had questions that you hope to get answered, I think these two candidates would be gracious to stick around and meet you and answer those questions for you directly. So we will adjourn for 5 minutes, and then we'll come back to place 4.